Let me ask a much too long question to get your reaction, and two parts. The first is, you were talking about Watergate, and you're talking about the war between some of the media, and if you visit Sage CQ's Washington headquarters, it's in the Watergate. And one of the things, if you're lucky, you get the tour of the room into which the Watergate burglars broke into. And from there, you can look across to where G. Gordon Liddy was there looking in to make sure that they weren't going to get caught when they did.
I think they actually give you that tour whether you want it or not.
You get that tour. But it then turned into this great movie that still remarkably holds up, All the President's Men. And in that is the editorial board meeting of the Washington Post, where people are sitting there fighting over whether or not Watergate gets any inches in the next day's newspaper. Not too long ago, I had a chance actually to visit the Washington Post editorial board. And it's nothing like All the President's Men anymore. The meeting started out about 10 o'clock in the morning, and they were at that point discussing which of the stories had led the web to that point that morning. First point. The next item on the agenda was what they were going to rotate onto the web page at noon to try to continue what it was going to happen. Then, in the last quarter of the meeting, they had the discussion about then how many inches people were going to get the next morning in the paper. So there's all of that, and then the Post on top of that has gotten really good at running the same story but with different headings to try to see what it is that they can actually draw people into and what kind of jazzy thing. So they're going social media in the business of real news. And so on the one hand, there's the challenge of trying to find a way in the news business to try to play the social media game, for starters. On the other side, the Gallup organization came up with this poll, and they asked who trusts which forms of organization, and it turns out that a lot of people just don't trust much of anything, and especially don't trust internet news. But it turns out that people at the lowest level of education trust stuff that they read on the internet the most. And that gets into the challenge of more educated people who trust what it is that the New York Times, the Washington Post would try to create and prevent and put on the internet. There are people who are less educated who are more likely to trust the competitors. The polarization that we're seeing, the efforts of Trump to try to play on fake news, I'm not smart enough to be able to figure out what the connections are, but I think there may be something in all of that stuff. And so, I mean, is there something in all that stuff, do you think, that has to do with polarization, education, differentiation of where people get their news, efforts of the news media to try to play the social media game against others who are out there either playing Candy Crush on the one side or getting the news from the internet otherwise?
I think a lot of people think there are. I mean, the best place to watch right now, if you're interested in those questions, I think is the Huffington Post, which Arianna Huffington founded 12 years ago. I don't know how long it's been. It was specifically set up to be the left's answer to Matt Drudge, who is still going strong. She has finally phased out. They have a new editor-in-chief, Lydia Polgren from the New York Times, who has made a big deal about tabloidizing the Huffington Post so that it will be appealing to these sorts of demographic groups that you're talking about. Will that work, and what effect will that have on its journalism? I don't know yet. Personally, I think it's important for us to sort of trust the intelligence of our audience, and I'm not going to move our journalism or reporting in any one direction because we're trying to play to a specific group. But I think everybody has a different approach to this.
You're also referencing a little bit the chaos out there because there is no business model yet that works. So there's so much experimentation going on, newsletters and sponsorships and events and foundation funding for news organizations, which never would have thought of doing that, how long ago. So it's because everybody is sort of floundering around trying to figure out how to be not just get through the year, but be sustainable. And there isn't a magic answer yet. And you're seeing a lot of that play out.
I think that's right. Steve?
I don't have an answer to your question. That's actually, I hadn't thought about it in quite those terms before. We've looked at age distribution by platform, and we definitely see by platform, print, web, social, you'll drop a decade one to the next in terms of our readership. The thing that interests me is there was a study that Pew published a few months ago that looked at this question of trust of content. And the main takeaway was that people who get their news in digital format, if the news is delivered to them from a trusted partner, a family or friend, they'll trust the content. They're more likely to trust the content. So the Pew report flagged that as a problem because it could be completely fake news that's passed along as if it were fact-checked and true. But it actually, the flip side is true too, is that if you're pursuing a promotional strategy or distribution strategy on social where your readers are sharing you're encouraging your readers to share with their folks and they are trusted, you win. So it doesn't get to your point, Don, but I think that there may be some other variables in play here that could overcome some of those problems of stratification of trust or access to the content.